There are concerns that toxic fumes in planes pose a health risk to frequent flyers and aircrew. Stanhope Payne, a senior coroner who's leading an inquiry into the death of a British Airways pilot, is calling on the Civil Aviation Authority to take urgent action to prevent future deaths. John Hoyte is a former pilot and training instructor who had to retire on medical grounds after he was affected by aerotoxic syndrome. He's since founded the Aerotoxic Association and joins us from Norwich. Mr. Hoyte, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News. Just briefly tell us when you first started to notice the effects of this syndrome.
So I was flying as a commercial pilot, airline pilot, from 1989 to 2005, and it was about 6 months after I started, that would have been early 1990, I started to experience unusual symptoms and so on. So that's when I first discovered it.
What did you put it down to begin with before you found out that it actually had a name?
Well, I was flying at night, and I assumed because I was going to work at 10 o'clock at night and finishing at 6 in the morning, it was due to my unusual schedules. So that's what I first put it down to. But then it sort of took over my life and just was constantly there for until 1998, and that's when I stopped night flying and went to day flying.
How much scepticism have you faced, though, when you've tried to talk to people about it?
Well, quite a lot over the years, which is... it's kind of understandable because, you know, it's quite inconvenient for the airlines, obviously, to have to face up to the fact that jet aircraft could be making people ill. So, yeah, we kind of get used to that.
I imagine, though, you would have to do quite a lot of flying to suffer any effects. If you're an irregular flyer once or twice a year, you wouldn't notice it, would you? Well,
there's documented cases of passengers on one flight being affected, and they're still affected. That's 7 years later after the flight. So I think you can work out that you can get it from one flight.
This senior coroner in Dorset, who's looking into the death of a British Airways pilot, has urged the Civil Aviation Authority to take urgent action. What's your reaction to his intervention with that?
Well, it's entirely appropriate. There should be toxic air detectors on board these aircraft, because at the moment you're just relying on the pilot's nose to determine whether there's any toxic air in the aircraft, and there are simple solutions like putting filters in the. I don't want to get technical, but in the bleed airlines to prevent the thing happening in the first place.
And I believe you think that would be relatively cheap to install. John Hoyte, thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure.